Today we will dive into the most critical transformations in fashion, so the shift from linear, take, make, waste, to a circular approach that prioritizes repair, reuse, and the resource regeneration. We are joined by four incredible panelists today, and everyone represents a different piece of the circularity puzzle. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive into, explore different insights, tackle also some tough questions, but also even have a little bit of fun of reimagining the future of fashion. So please, let me welcome all my panelists to the stage. We have Agnes Weber, founder of Mended.
Thank you.
We have Christina Schwarzkopf. She's the co-founder of Prolong. We have Mano Brown, director at Systemic and co-author of the Circular Business Revolution book. And last but not least, we have Mandy Krüger, head of fashion at eBay.
Perfect.
Welcome all. I'm really happy to see you.
Thank you.
I would like to start this panel discussion with the following question, which is a little bit different. If you could go back in time to one moment in fashion history and implement circular businesses, when and where would it be?
Who wants to kick it
Who
off?
wants to start?
Agnes.
Well, I think we talked about this previously, that it's not a matter of going back and implementing circular business model. It's more like, where did we lose it in the first place? And I think you really talked a lot about where did we lose the repair behavior, but also I think where did we lose the value of these things, and this moment of like, well, now fashion is this disposable item almost, so it's not even worth repairing or worth reselling or whichever circular business model you want to slap on top of it. So I think that's kind of where we lost it all.
Yeah, agree. I think we got swept up in time at one point or another and just went with it, right? Without really being aware of the ramifications this behavior, changing behavior at that time had. And for me personally, I kind of wish I would have known the impact because I also fell for it, right? Admittedly. And yeah, I think looking back, it's definitely something I wish I would have known. And it may have moved the needle for me and I would have not done it. So.
Yeah. And maybe looking back in history, I think also the point where production moved away from kind of Western countries, I think there a lot of knowledge and craft was lost, and with that also the knowledge of different kind of circular initiatives, materials, etc. And I think that's really something where there's a lot of opportunity also to bring that knowledge back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when you build on that, you can get almost a bit philosophical, because we talk around circularity as if it's something new or like a trend. But if you actually look out there and into nature, it is there since ever. Like, nature works like a circular economy. It works in a way that we have zero waste, that we usually use resources productively, and that it works regeneratively. And these are the core principles of circularity that should be also the basis for basically the discussion. And it's out there. It's not really new. It's a different mindset of how we should optimize, basically.
Yeah, I do agree. And actually, we're talking one big part of this whole circularity, like businesses, is repair. So Agnes, how do repair services contribute to extending also the life cycle of a garment? And what challenges do you face in making this a mainstream solution for consumers and for brands?
Well, I think how repair contributes to extending the life, that's quite straightforward. Like, I can go on an hour about just the environmental impact of it, but I think the real juicy topic here is when we start talking about challenges. Because, well, the main challenge for repair to become mainstream, it needs to be integrated where it all starts, and that's at the brand. But the moment you want to integrate it at the brand, if I'm on my daily sales calls, the number one question is, okay, is repair economically viable? Like, is this profitable? And to be honest, the short answer I would give is repair in itself isn't, because repair for most people, and I'm curious what this room feels like doing your taxes. Like, even if you look at some of the brands' repair services, it's almost like you're filling in your tax return form, or it's like a warranty claim sort of situation. Nothing about this feels like something you want to do again, and also nothing about this actually creates this touch point that you have at end of sale, after they've bought from you, into something that makes them happier and brings them back. So that's why it's no surprise that sometimes brands come to me and like, take my in-house repair service, do what you did with Aunt Angels. That's what I want. So what does that mean? Well, I think we really changed the way how repair feels, sounds, even smells, in a way that we set ourselves a target. We said, okay, we want 100 repairs in the first month, or at least in the first quarter. We got it in the first 10 minutes. And that's because Aunt Angels has this community that loves their products, and now we have a service that they actually love to use and keep it in play. And now, well, I can talk about the business benefits, but our longest partners see that the customer lifetime value is just 2.3 times higher.
Yeah.
We have the 12 million PR impressions. I'll stop now, but there's plenty to say that all of a sudden repair is economically viable.
That's amazing to hear. Now talking about aftercare, so Christina, many brands are going now to this, like exploring the aftercare solutions for their brands. How does Prolong adapt its platform to cater also to these different brands, the requirements and scales when incorporating aftercare and repair services into their business models? How does it work?
Yeah, so I can say it's super challenging offering services at large. So you have, as a global brand, right, you have customers everywhere. You have different markets to cater to, different channels from your retail stores to online. You have wholesale partners. And then, of course, in offering aftercare services, you need a large network of service providers to help you with it. And so that is really hard to manage. And that's where, what we developed is a solution that helps brands basically manage all of these services kind of in one tool, including everything from logistics around it, payment, which you also have if you want to monetize services, for example. Also general kind of claim management, what Agnes was saying, like warranty claims is not a sexy thing, but actually it's a great touch point. Yeah, right? Someone's coming to you, requesting a service, and you can turn it into something that actually brings something to your brand in terms of loyalty. And one other aspect that we're focusing on that is a huge challenge is that as a brand, it's very hard to offer services yourself, so you need a network. And I think that's why we believe in general in circular services, it is around creating a network effect. And that's what we're building is like with the vision of having the largest kind of global network of service providers, so including everything from cobblers, tailors, cleaners, and kind of coming together with the brands to being able to offer these services, and then kind of enhanced by technology, which just has so many benefits in kind of driving efficiency, driving kind of connection, and enabling communication. And that's kind of how we're trying to help and basically adapting it to the brand's needs, right? As I said, brands are global. They need to have different products. Some sell jewelry, some sell footwear. So you need different service partners, etc. So that's basically we kind of modularized it so that everybody can pick and choose based on their needs and what they want to offer to the customer.
That's amazing. And yeah, that's what you're saying also, like every brand will have different challenges as well. So you have to kind of redirect also yours, like how you're tackling for one brand and the other. And I think in general, still circular businesses, they come with many, many challenges because it's still in transition. So Manuel, for you, what systemic barriers currently hinder the adoption of circular businesses or circular models? And how do you work to dismantle them with systemic?
So I think systemic barriers or systemic problems, it's a big word, kind of a theoretical word. So what is it? Now, I always like the definition. Systemic problems, it's a problem which is out there, where everybody says, well, it's a huge problem, we should solve it, but it's not really being solved. So in fashion, we have big waste dumps in the Atacama Desert, that pictures everybody knows here. Everybody says, how can that happen? I don't want this. Each brand would say, I don't want my product to be there, but it's happening. So, and it's hard to solve, very hard to solve problems. And I think on circularity, we have these barriers or problems almost on different levels. A simple way to look at this is starting from more like the societal level, a deeply ingrained, almost like need for more, or like people want more consumption, ownership. That's kind of deeply ingrained. It's driving overconsumption often, and that's a big systemic problem. On the kind of more like governmental level, you have the point on resources. Resource prices are really misaligned. It's much cheaper to dig out new material out of the ground than to often use recycled materials. It's a big problem. So misaligned resource prices. In the value chains, a really big one is transparency. like actually knowing where are the products coming from. You know, like how does the supply chain work? I think we have digital product passports. It's a big topic. I know here. Yesterday evening we talked a lot about that. It's really needed to solve that systemic barrier of transparency. You need to get down to tier 3, 4, 5 to know what's happening. Or like Julia said, to actually go to the people on the ground and talk to them. And then it goes to the product level. Even there you have systemic barriers, like the design choices. Often the designers, they are the most critical intervention point on circularity. It's all driven by design. And at the end of the day, often the designers don't have the incentive to design the product for sustainability. If you put high share of recycled material in, the designers, they don't have the benefit from it. Because at the end of life, it's being recovered by somebody else. So how do you bridge some of these misalignments of incentives? So actually the design choices are incentivized to make the right choices for end of life. We don't have a responsibility of the designer to think about end of life often. And these are systemic barriers. And at Systemic, the company I'm working with and I'm co-leading in Germany, we are trying to tackle this from a collaboration point of view. We often say, hey, we need to assemble the right organizations to bring them together to work on this. So for example, right now, textile recycling is a really big topic. It's very hard to crack. Everybody's waiting for it to work economically, but it's challenging. So for example, right now we assembled a couple of brands together to, for example, conduct research and to actually an analytic exercise to understand what is needed to bring this across the tipping point. So that's one example from our work as a think tank to kind of tackle that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say, I think the supply chain of the fashion industry is very, very long, and some people are not aware of how long it is. But also another challenge that you were saying is the consumption as well. So the consumer side, what do we want? What do people want? That we want all the time more. So Mandy, for you, looking at like from the marketplace perspective, what are, like, they're connecting supply and demand. So how do you ensure that your marketplace promotes circular practices over conventional consumption?
Well, I think as unopened today, saying eBay is the OG in that space, right? This is our foundation, this is how we got started, and we're turning 30 this year from a global perspective. We've been in Germany, last year we had our 25-year anniversary. So this is our foundation, this is what we do. From a consumer perspective, right, we want to always make it easy for consumers to shop on our page and give them a really, really great experience. And eBay is known for that, so our consumers also come for that purpose on our platform. From a brand perspective, what we offer the brands is they can offload that inventory that we just heard, right? And we offer them opportunities to sell their take-backs, their returns, and also their imperfect inventory on our platform. We also do this through external partners, because a lot of times brands, they don't have that operational setup to facilitate that. So we have partners like Reverse Supply, you will hear Janis speaking later, and we partner with them to bring that to our platform and to the consumer. From a community perspective, what we're doing is we partnered with the Fashion Council. Last year, we launched the Circular Fashion Fund, and what we're doing here is we're giving brands, young businesses, opportunities to support their innovative ideas and to drive this forward.
That's amazing. We were yes, clap. So also another challenge that we can see right now very strongly also in Europe are all the regulations that are starting to come up even more and more. And Christina, for you, given the diverse regulatory landscape across different countries right now, what challenges and opportunities do you see to adapt as a brand to evolving this around circularity to these regulations? Because as I know, Prolong is also based in France, right? So maybe
Yes.
can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, sure. So I think, yeah, as a brand, there's definitely many challenges come in with all these regulations coming, right? Of kind of managing all of them, getting all the data around it, etc., setting up your team. We come more from the side of we see a lot of opportunities actually in it. So as you mentioned, we're based out of France, and there's a lot of also not only regulations coming from the government, but also, for example, subsidies. So as an example, in France, there's something called a refashion bonus. So there's actually a bonus that as an end consumer or as a brand that you get if you prolong the life of your product. And so what we did with our solution is we basically integrated that into it so that as a brand it's very easy to offer it. So it's kind of technologically integrated, so you can directly kind of deducted from the price for your consumer, just to make it easier as well to basically tap into these subsidies. So, and we expect that more and more countries are going to launch these, and then kind of as a global brand, you can basically tap into them everywhere and offer them to your consumer. I mean, that's one where we see an opportunity. Something else that we believe in is on the with actually offering services and circular services. You capture a lot of data, right? You capture data on customer usage, on product durability, on repairability, and also on just the end of life of your product. And so this is also a way to capture the data that you need for upcoming regulations around kind of the extended producer responsibility, etc. So there we see another. It's definitely a challenge for brands, but actually in offering services and kind of staying connected to your consumer, you can gather this data and use it, and also make like an assessment on avoided emissions. If you add services like circular services, of course, have an impact on that as well. So that's another item. So we see maybe the last thing as well is, I think just in general, the regulations bring also just more awareness, right, from a consumer side, and that is of course an opportunity also for circular services to be driven forward.
Yeah, and maybe going to the same question for you, Agnes, because like Christina explained now some of the regulatory pressures that maybe some brands are also feeling due to this regulation. What are other factors that you see that are driving also brands to repair? Like, do you see that strong movement?
Yeah, I think regulations is that one stick. Yeah. Sometimes it also acts like the carrot, but mostly the stick. The other stick, let's say, is the customer demand, like the amount of customers that are now turning to brands and they're like, well, I bought this from you, so you're the one who has to get it fixed. Don't get me wrong, this is not necessarily driven from the sustainability perspective. It's not the customer saying you gotta be a bit more green. It's more this service level expectations, like especially the Germans. We love a good, okay, I'm Austrian, I'll call myself we now. We love a good service and quality. Like this is the expectations. And brands, if you check into their DMs, into their customer support channels, that's what they have to deal with. The other reason, I think, there's this FOMO around repair at this stage. I mean, it's not only the Angels of the world, it's the Zara, the Adidas. Like everyone is kind of getting their name in the game now because they're like, oh, we need to stay relevant. And they're seeing how, I mean, look at Veja, the store in Berlin, the example of how they and even Nudie Jeans are able to drive all this traffic using repair. And kind of the same is true for us. Like we're able to create that same, I want to call it doorstep dopamine. You know when your Zalando package arrives at your doorstep and there's this little moment of like, ooh, what have we got there? With repair, nobody thought that that's something that we can generate. But we were, so one of the things that we do, and this is my little childhood dream, who has grown up watching Willy Wonka? Like the whole Charlotte and the Chocolate Factory, nice. So one of the things we do regularly is we hide seasonal golden tickets in our packages, where basically you can win a stay at an off-grid cabin or whatnot, and constantly associating this dopamine rush to something so old school like repair. I've brought you a little taste of that. There's 2 lucky people in this room who have something underneath their seat. 2 of our signature golden tickets. I'm sorry to everyone on the stairs. That didn't work. You guys, if you now check underneath your seats, do a little, I know there's a front row ticket and definitely a 3rd row.
Why not here?
These chairs were not here when I came here. We got one. So that's the sort of...
Sorry, I'm not doing smiley face because I'm in the same business. I do repairs. I do not need
Well, amazing. It goes like a win-win. Amazing. Well, just to give you a taste as of what... well, we just got a reaction from it, and that's usually not the reaction you get from repair. And if brands can use that, then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, I want that too.
That's amazing. And as you were explaining this, getting a package, this adrenaline rush, maybe if repair would also offer this kind of momentum,
Yeah.
Making something that is actually like not boring, but like not clean enough or something, make it again like super nice that you can receive something that creates this. It's super...
Because I have to think of you now. Mandy and I, yesterday at dinner, we talked about her favorite gunny skirt. That button fell off. And look at that disappointment on her face.
Yeah.
Well, now not anymore. But when you can't get that back, and now imagine your favorite gunny skirt is at your doorstep, and you're like, oh, what did they make out of it? Like, how is it good as new, or what does it look like? So that's that's a whole nother feeling than just yet another item that you ordered.
For sure. And I think for you, Mandy, now that we were talking about this, I think the circular business in general rely heavily on consumer adaptation. So what consumers demand and how they want to purchase things. So how do you address the gap between the intention and the actual behavior? Because I think it's also, we see a lot of people talking about it, like, I want to be more sustainable, but at the end of the day, the reaction is completely different due to multiple reasons. So how do you do it at eBay?
Absolutely. I think we all know change is hard, right? And to change behavior, that doesn't just happen overnight, that takes a long time. And so what we are doing from a consumer perspective, in 2023, we're not taking any listing fees from our consumer-to-consumer clients anymore. So you can list your items on eBay for free. We're always optimizing our listing experience. It's very, very fast now. We just launched a listing experience, and we did last week in San Jose. We had a little fashion offsite, and did also a little challenge on how long is the quickest listing, and it actually took 1 minute and 3 seconds. So try it out. It's fantastic. And then from a brand perspective, we're always, supporting the brands. We partner with the brands to drive this forward through various initiatives. And from a community perspective, I think it's great that we're sitting here, we're talking about it, right? It's so important to have these conversations. We need to continue to have these conversations. And we also need to involve our consumers in this conversation and talk to them. I think word of mouth is still the biggest mover and shaker in this sense. Yes, marketing helps, but if I have a conversation with you about my experience shopping on eBay and the things that I can find there, they are unique and I get them at a very valuable price as well, that shifts the needle for you to probably look at it as well and say, hey, I'm going to check this out. From another perspective, in a consumer sense, we want to also, unlock their closets and get these products into our shops. So not just from the brands, but also there's a lot of inventory out there that's sitting in our wardrobes. So post it, bring it to eBay. And from a community perspective, we want to continue to educate, right? We have a great partnership with the council. We're tapping into students and facilitating workshops for them, really sort of enticing them to think about it differently and upcycling and what I can do with garments and change minds. What they go to their peer groups and they talk to their peers and their friends about it, and maybe also their parents, right? Also a big generation that is not quite aware of that. And so I think there's a lot of facets and of all of this and the change and the movement. I think it's important that we stick to it, that we continue to have these conversations, that we across the industry collaborate and put our heads together, and also across the industry, we learned that yesterday that there are a lot of synergies there as well to drive this forward together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Manuel, I also have a question for you about the scalability also of the circular model. So if it starts also to scale, like how is accessibility, like this accessibility and the ease of use to become like more critical for the consumers? What can business leaders learn from your book that you co-wrote in order to design circular solutions that are not only sustainable but also highly accessible and time efficient for their consumers? As you were saying, it starts already very, very early in the supply chain. So what can we learn from your book?
So I work on circularity actually with a lot of passion. I love the topic, but across industries. So in the fashion space, but even more on electronics actually, and mobility and packaging and all of that. And that comes with the beauty that I see a lot of examples, and there's a lot of things happening. It's like extremely vibrant space. And this also led to the fact that I actually wrote the book, because I saw a lot of things and I thought, hey, I want to bring this together. And that's why I wrote this book, The Circular Business Revolution. And I will also leave like 1 or 2 copies here if you want to have a look later. But the idea was really to kind of bring that examples together and kind of create a framework of learning from that. And to your question, actually, I'm a very analytic person. So I'm actually not from design, so I'm very analytic. I always look at the business case. That's kind of how I approach the thing. So how can it work? How can it scale from a business perspective? And if you look at the business cases of successful examples, there are many enablers to that. But one very critical one, I would say almost a fundamental one for circular business models, it's loyalty. So loyalty, optimizing for loyalty is the key enabler for the business model. So what does that mean? So let's look at the models, right? So if you look at a classic brand that is selling a high quality, sustainable product, how you build loyalty into that. Obviously, people need to love it, but you also can think the business model a bit differently. One example that I like, I just talked to them last week, was a small brand from Zurich, right? Nikin. Maybe you have seen them. A very sustainable brand. They start to play around with the business model of, hey, we sell you the product, but actually we want it back. So we give you like a guaranteed buyback channel. If you don't need it anymore, please sell it back. You get like X euro or francs. And by the way, the longer you wear it, the more we give you back. It's kind of a super interesting way of like building loyalty, obviously, into your system and a commitment to the brand. And I find that quite powerful. Same in re-commerce. So resale is by far the business model where I do also most of my work. A big trend, many of you are working on this. But to really crack the resale case, you need to build loyalty. It's not about just reselling a product as a second-hand product in a good way. It's really about, you have two types of customers, right? One customer that is coming back, and that customer that is selling you something back, you want to build a loyal relationship to. Through like a voucher, through credit, or through just a really fair way of actually taking things back and enabling an upgrade or whatever. So that is a very important enabler of the whole business case. Sometimes most brands, will make less money on the resale, but more money actually on the loyalty relationship. It's a really big component, so you need to think that broad. And then lastly on rental. So we don't talk a lot about rental because rental is really hard. Like in fashion, rental is super difficult to pull off, particularly in B2C. I believe in rental more in the B2B case. For example, we see it working in workwear, right? So, classic workwear. And here it's not only about, renting the blue-collar worker shirt that you need at a production facility. It's about actually cleaning it, picking it up, bringing it back. It's about solving a real customer problem. And that's about loyalty. So when you want to crack rental, it's also about like actually solving a new customer problem, not just a product and attaching a subscription model to it. It's about really solving it. So loyalty is the fundamental enabler to the business case, and I think that's also why the customer is so centric to look at first and not too late.
Well, I think also like loyalty, someone coming back to your brand, that's the ultimate goal, right? And maybe brands need to not only create the perfect product or to see what works well, but also like how do we get them to come back without a new purchase, but rather they will come for aftercare or other, yeah. That's amazing. So actually, unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. So I want to ask the one last question to all of you. If you had to leave the audience here with one key takeaway or a call to action about circular business models, what would it be? What can we do? Oh.
Well, if I should kick it off, I think it's to your point, which is if you add the circular business model, don't do it for the sake of adding it, but it has to be relevant to the customer. And one example, so these are my by far favorite shoes. This one is broken. I've been running around with it for like a month. This is coming from you, from the lady who runs the repair business, because I don't know, it's back at the problem. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to trust. I don't know how much it's going to cost. So unless it's something that's solving the customer pain, then it's actually going to link in with your other KPIs and make sense, because you're going to make a service that's relevant to me, not to your KPIs on your circularity board.
Maybe something else to add. I think it's in circularity in general, it's a lot about collaboration. I think it will in the end only work if kind of brands collaborate, if also players and service providers collaborate, and we see really like the biggest potential in that. That it's not a one company like solving it or one government solving it, but it really has to be about collaboration. Maybe just sharing one maybe a bit different example is what we've seen, for example, in service providers, which are often a bit overlooked. We see is that as an example, also to Agnes' example, is that like a tailor buys their zipper for around 10 euros, as an example. So that means they have to sell it to you for at least 20, right? So that already makes the whole economics for you as a customer way less interesting, and for them much more challenging. And if you bring it at scale, though, like a brand would buy it for €1 versus 10 euros, so you can just change the whole business model around it, but it's only like enabled through kind of a collaboration from and a scale. So I think that's really something that I believe from like consumers can collaborate, brands can collaborate, service partners can collaborate, and across the different circularity services. So yeah, that's kind of what I leave with, is that I think it's in the end really something that has to have a collaborative approach.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, you know, there has been like a massive progress on sustainability over the last 10 years, but there's a lot to do. But the time for the low-hanging fruits, it's over, unfortunately. So often you start with the easy things, and it's getting more difficult. And for that, you need to collaborate. And also, I think, you know, using this space here to actually see, you know, what are partnerships that I could build up. I think that's the first starting point. I was quite impressed yesterday. You know, Agnes, you're working with others here already. I think eBay, it's interesting one because, I mean, it's the pioneer on circular business models to some degree. And I like it that you approach this and say, hey, let's build an ecosystem around this. We're like an enabler, we're an ecosystem player. We're not like, you know, those who need to actually run all of that. So let's build this and let's facilitate it. So I think that type of a mindset of like thinking in an ecosystem, it's quite fundamental. And I think that's my final point.
Nice.
I think I can only echo what has been said. I think it's don't do it just for the sake of doing it. Do it because you believe in it, right? And have this conversation. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your peers in the industry. And I think we can only learn from each other to drive this forward and be on this journey together.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let's take what we learned today beyond this room and just take actions. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.